Hello and welcome to another video of Meneer Schoolmeesters. In this video I'm going to talk to you about inheriting money. This is dealt with in Buying and Working, Chapter 8 of LWEO, and is for the third graders, bilingual pupils obviously. Alright, so what is inheriting? Inheriting means that you get money from someone who just passed away, who is dead. And if you get money, then you are a so-called heir. Well, the heirs are determined in a so-called will. And in the will, someone, before he dies, says, I want my money to go to this person or that person. Well, if there is no will, which is possible, the law states who your heirs are, and your heirs are your legal partner, so someone you're married to, or your blood relatives. By the way, legal partner can also mean someone that you have a registered partnership with. Alright, so taxes. If someone gives you money, leaves you money, so if money goes from one owner to the other, the Dutch tax authorities say you have to pay taxes. Yes? This is, to some people, an unfair form of taxes because over that amount, a lot of taxes already have been paid. Income tax, for example. So, but nonetheless, you have to pay taxes. Well, in this video, I'm going to explain how to calculate these taxes and what is left. So, I'm going to explain this to you by using 5 steps. So the first thing that you do is you have to determine the inheritance. So how much money does the person leave behind? Or what capital? It can also be a building, so it doesn't necessarily have to be the money in the bank. The second step you take is determine the heirs. And that depends on the situation, obviously. Do we have children or not? Yes. Are your children, do they live or don't they live anymore? So the third step is determine what part the heirs get, because not every heir gets the same portion. I'll come to that later in my example. Then you have to determine the so-called exemption. So the law states that the first part of your inheritance is tax-free. So you don't have to pay taxes on that. So what's left after the exemption, that is taxable, and you do have to pay taxes over it. And the last, determine the tax amount so that you can determine what you get as a net amount. In the book, there are 2 tables, one with the exemption. I've copied them here because the book may be different every year, so I've copied them here. If you're a partner, you get a big exemption, 650,000 euros. So the first 650,000 euros you get is tax-free. A child gets an exemption of 20,000 euros. Parents, 48,812, and others, 2,173. Then, how much tax do you have to pay? What taxes do you have to pay? What percentages? So the first 124,000, so it's 727. If you are a parent or a child, only 10%. If you're a grandchild, 18, and others, 30%, and so on. So, let's go to the example. We have a husband and wife. And the husband and wife have 3 children, had 3 children, better said. Child 1, 2, and 3. Unfortunately for the parents, child 3 passed away a few years ago, but he left behind 2 grandchildren, 1 and 2. Now, the husband dies, so the money has to go to the heirs. Well, the capital, the joint capital of the husband and wife is 800,000 euros. And they are married in community of property, so that means that half of that 800,000 was the husband's. Alright, so the first step we take is determine how much money does the inheritance, better say. So, how much money does he leave behind? So, half of the joint capital is 400,000 euros. So, he has to divide 400,000 euros. Who are the heirs? Well, the first heir, legal partner, is the wife, and then the blood relatives. So that's child 1, 2, and would have been child 3 if he lived. But because he's dead, his grandchildren take his place. So these 2 grandchildren take the place of child 3. Yes, because they're blood relatives as well. Then, determine what everyone gets. Suppose we just pretend that child 3 isn't dead, but is still alive. Then there's 4 heirs who get an equal share. The wife, child 1, child 2 and child 3. So they get 25%. So the wife 25, the child 1 25, 2 25. Well, 3 isn't there anymore, so his 25% has to be divided amongst his children. So this grandchild gets 12.5% and this one gets 12.5% as well. So now we know the percentages, we can determine what amount everyone gets. So 25% of 400,000 is 100,000. Here the same, child 1 and 2 and the grandchildren get 12.5% of 400,000 is 50,000 euros. Then we have to determine the so-called exemption. The wife, is a partner, gets an exemption of 650,000 euros. So her taxable amount is 0 because she stays within the exemption. So everything that she gets is within the exemption, so she doesn't have to pay taxes. For the children, they have an exemption of 20,616. So that means that the taxable amount is what they get minus the exemption, leaves them 79,384 euros, both for child 1 and 2. Then we go to the grandchildren. Grandchildren have a very low exemption because they are considered others. So it doesn't really matter if you get money from your grandparents or from me, for example. The exemption is 2,173, which means that the grandchildren both have an exemption of 2,173, which leaves a taxable amount 47,827. Yes? So, step 5. Determine the tax amount. The tax amount of the wife is nothing, because nothing is taxable. So she doesn't pay taxes, and she's left with 100,000 euros. Yes? Then, child 1 and 2, they pay, partner and child, and they stay beneath the 124,000, so they pay 10% taxes, which means 7,938 euros, which leaves them with a net amount of 92,062 euros. Now, grandchild 1 and 2, they have a taxable amount of 47,827. With the taxes, here they are grandchildren, so they pay 18% because they stay beneath the first, so to speak. Alright, so 48,827 times 18% is 8,608. So what they are left with is the gross amount that they receive minus the tax amount. So what happens is that you do this, because this goes wrong quite a few times. So you take the 100,000 minus the tax amount, is 92,000 left, and the grandchildren are left with 41,392. Now, I have to gaze in the book, because the husband died. Suppose that this capital is the house in which they live in. which would mean that if the husband died and they have to get their portion, the wife has to sell the house. In order to protect the wife from having to sell her house, the law states that she has a so-called usufruct, which means that she can stay in the house as long as she lives, and the children have to wait for their inheritance. So she can use the house, hence the word usufruct. They have to pay taxes nonetheless. So, hopefully you understand a bit more what inheriting money is, how to calculate the net amount that you are left with, yes, and for that you have to take 5 steps. Determine the inheritance, determine the heirs, what part the heirs get, and how much money then, determine the exemption, and then the tax amount and the net amount. So, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and at the right hand side at the bottom there's a button on which you can subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Cheerio!